Thank you for joining me today and watching my video. I'm going to be talking about finding the focal point on an illness or disease. Now, the best way I know how to do this is to do a case study, and I chose a 39-year-old female who has complaints of mast cell activation disorder, which she has anaphylaxis from on a regular basis, and from foods and supplements. She has a limited diet due to histamine intolerance. She has depression with suicidal ideations, anxiety, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, colitis, and celiac disease. Her diet includes a low histamine diet, and she also grows her own sprouts at home, and these are special sprouts called DAO, which is diamine oxide, which metabolizes histamine in the intestines. And she takes Benadryl, 50 milligrams 4 times a day, which gives her all kinds of side effects that she reports. She has an EpiPen to use as needed in case she goes into anaphylactic shock. She takes Cymbalta for depression, and she also takes Amino, which she claims helps stabilize her mast cells and prevents her from going into anaphylaxis. I like using the NutrEval by Genova. This test is excellent for helping me find the focal point of the problem. Now, on Genova's test, the very first page is going to give you this very nice results overview, and it gives you this color-coded chart. The ones in the red are the high-need vitamins, and then we have some borderline vitamins. And it's a nice guide, but it doesn't identify where the problem lies, where to start, or why we even have these deficiencies in the first place. And a few pages down, you'll find a really nice picture of the citric acid cycle. You can see at the top that fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, they go through a lot of enzymatic reactions to make acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA is the first step that goes into the citric acid cycle, and then down here, electrons are passed down through this section here to go to the electron transport chain, and then the end product is ATP, which is the energy source that our body uses. Now, I like to start on page 7 of the Genova report at the malabsorption and detox markers. And from here, we can tell that she has some problems with malabsorption here. And then I look at the bacterial and the yeast markers, and they really don't look too bad. She has one marker for yeast that's borderline high. But the markers that concern me the most are this benzoic acid and hippuric acid. This pattern is suggesting that her detox pathway, phase 1, is being overwhelmed and doesn't have the necessary resources it needs to conjugate toxins properly and make it more water soluble to pass to phase 2 for excretion from the body. And what the body does is it usually attaches a glycine, and it also uses B5 as an energy source for attaching the glycine to make this process happen. So I'm going to look into possibility of B5 and glycine problems here. So I look at the amino acid profile because I want to see, do we have problems with amino acids? And I see here lots of red. Everything is way over on the high side, and this is very opposite of what I would have expected. She's on a low protein diet, and proteins, as you know, are metabolized to amino acids. I would have expected to see things on the low side here, but on the contrary, we see things on the high side. So this is telling me that she's unable to utilize the amino acids that she does have. And so in utilizing amino acids, we need vitamins. And so the next section I looked at is the vitamin markers. And she has a lot of borderline high. She has one very high for MMA, that's methylmalonic, and that's the metabolite for B12. But all of these alpha keto acids here are kind of borderline high. This is indicative of a B complex deficiency, the B complex being B1, B2, B3, B5, lipoic acid, and biotin. But they're not so high as to give me reason to think that that this is the sole reason why she's not utilizing her amino acids. It may be just one of these vitamins that are involved in this process. Now, earlier I said that glycine needed to conjugate with benzoic acid, and so I was keeping in mind of a glycine deficiency. But when we get to the glycine and serine metabolites, we see that glycine is very high here. So she's unable to conjugate the glycine to the toxin for phase 1 reactions to happen. So then the next thing I looked at is her neurotransmitters. Now these are the metabolites of epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. And we can see here, these first two are a little bit low. That's norepinephrine, epinephrine, and then dopamine. And usually with high amino acids, you might see higher levels, but in her case, they're low. And you see low neurotransmitters when you have a COMT mutation, and they're not breaking down the amino acids, so you have a low turnover. But I believe in her case, it's the lack of utilization rather than the lack of turnover. And then these last three markers here are indicative of neurologic inflammation, and she has a little bit of that going on here too. So the next section is fatty acid metabolism. Now she has, this is the omega-3s, they're all very, very low, and I would have expected that with her because she's unable to eat fish because fish are very high in histamine. She says that she can't tolerate flax and she can't tolerate avocado, and of course she avoids nuts because they're high in histamine. And so you look at the omega-6, they're also a little low, but they are higher, and then some of them are even much higher than the omega-3. So this pattern is suggesting that she has an omega-6 dominance. And just to a little bit more about fatty acids is that you don't look at individual fatty acids. What we look for is patterns. And then and of course she has very high omega-9s, and then the saturated fatty acids, they're all low. I cut off the bottom of this slide, I'm sorry about that, but all of these were low all the way to the bottom. So she basically has an overall fatty acid deficiency, and then of course this delta-6 desaturase is the marker for zinc deficiency, and she's somewhat high there, and that's really important in fatty acid metabolism and antioxidant protection of the fatty acids. And so when we look at the next slide, the lipid peroxides, this is indicative of a lot of oxidative stress going on in the blood vessels. And you would think that with low fatty acids in the blood vessels, that she would have low lipid peroxidation, but this is not the case. See how high her lipid peroxides are. And this is indicative of a lack of antioxidants in the cardiovascular system. And so we're going to have to look into other causes, such as mineral deficiency, heavy metals, or B-complex vitamins there that are missing. So one of the reasons why fatty acids can be low is because of lack of absorption, and you need bile for absorbing fatty acids, and so bile requires glycine and taurine to be combined, and utilizing this enzyme called bile acid acetyltransferase. And B5 is very critical for providing the acetyl-CoA needed for this fat metabolism. So again, we're seeing vitamin B deficiency again here in the fatty acid section. And another genetic mutation that she had is the ACAT1, which is acetyl-CoA transferase. She has a heterozygous mutation here, and this enzyme carries the acetyl groups. And B5 utilizes the acetyl groups and makes the acetylation happen in your detox pathways. And B5 is a critical part of acetylation because B5 carries your acetyl groups throughout the body. Now, going back to our original slide of the overview, looking here, where is the B5? Where's the pantothenic acid in this report? Well, it's not here. Because of the centrality of CoA in metabolic function, B5 is one of the most difficult nutrients to establish conclusively and to assess. And so do you see how it could be really difficult for her to tolerate all of these vitamins? If she was to go home with a box full of these vitamins, it could really create a lot of phase 1 toxic intermediates that could potentially stimulate an anaphylactic problem with her, difficulty with expressing all these toxic intermediates, and she would really have a hard time here. Okay, so the focal point of her health issues, I believe, starts with pantothenic acid B5. And so what can we expect with B5 supplementation in this patient? Well, B5 is going to help with the detox pathways and conjugating glycine. It's going to help be able to utilize the amino acids to make neurotransmitters and help to stabilize her mood. It's going to help with the amino acid assimilation and utilization and protein synthesis. It's going to help with bile acid synthesis. It's going to enable her to initiate fatty acid synthesis and metabolism. The citric acid cycle is now going to be able to produce ATP a lot more effectively. She's going to have better intestinal absorption and hydrochloric acid production. Now, these last two are very essential in digestion. Our body utilizes about 30% of the calories gained from our food energy and use in the digestive process alone. And this hydrochloric acid production requires an enormous amount of energy. And the intestinal absorption requires energy because there's a lot of transporters that pull nutrients in that are energy requiring. So the results of the B5 with this patient, I talked to her after 3 days later, and she said that her depression was resolved within 2 days. She has no suicidal ideation, less anxiety, more focused, and this was her statement. She said, I am amazed at how just one vitamin can make such a difference in how I feel. So I encourage you to find the focal point of your health issues. Don't go home with a bucket full of supplements. Work with your practitioner, find the underlying issue, start there, go slow, and allow your body to recover from, and you find that one nutrient, you give the body that one nutrient, and let your body absorb a lot of the other nutrients it needs from its food. And that's how the NutrEval can be used to find the focal point and helping you recover from your health issues. And I just want to thank you for watching my video. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email at beyondpharmaceuticals.com. Thank you.